Another one I would say that we haven't mentioned yet is astragalus. And
Mm.
astragalus is a root, and it's a chi tonic, meaning it improves your moment to moment energy, vitality, cognitive function, immune system function. And this one is what I would start everybody on before I try to get them to have reishi, which can be a little bit bitter.
Mhm.
I would start them on astragalus because astragalus has a very mild flavor to it. Massive benefits, mild.
All right, y'all, let's jump in. I'm here with Sage, and we're talking. I mean, really, we're talking about adaptogenic herbs, but let's be honest, we're talking about chocolates. So I'm so excited to have him on today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. So I would love to just kind of start with your journey to become the chocolatier that you are. And I do want to dive into like I love nerding out and my listeners love nerding out on the sciencey part of, we talked about adaptogenics and all that. But you've studied a lot, you've traveled a lot, you've seen a lot, and that has like come to fruition into this business that you have. So you just kind of share your journey to get to where you are and starting going down this path, this wellness path that you're on right now.
Sure. So I grew up as a vegetarian, which is already a bit unusual. Not necessarily a healthy vegetarian by any means, but my parents were doing the best they could, given the knowledge that was available in the semi pre-internet 90s. But it was coming to form in like brown rice and tofu 5 nights a week. And then one night was pizza and one night was pasta. And it was like a lot of what my Aunt Evelyn would call fluff. And my parents were doing the best they could. It was mostly organic. We weren't really eating much fast food. There was a lot happening in the right direction, but there was a lot of room left for optimization. And I always kind of felt this, especially in athletics, that I would reach a certain level of performance and competitive aptitude, but there was a higher level that I could never quite break into.
Mm-hmm.
And same with academics as well. I would do really well up to a certain point, but there was this higher echelon of performance I couldn't reach. And I felt something was missing. And I also had the great blessing that my parents had a wellness center that I grew up around. And so they had, way before it was cool, they had infrared saunas, infrared heated jade massage beds. And then they started selling some superfood related products. And I got a little bit curious. Like, I've never heard this term, superfood. What is that? And there was this local guy that came in who was selling this superfood protein powder mix. And it had mainly hemp protein, but also spirulina and chlorella, some other Western herbs like milk thistle and things for cleansing out the whole digestive system a little bit. And I was looking at this guy who was in his 40s, but looked like he could be in his 20s. He was super ripped, super intelligent. And I was like, wow, I want what he has.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if this protein mix that he's telling me he has twice a day for two of his meals can get me there. I want to try this. And so I didn't know what I was doing. I just started blending up this mix with some frozen berries and Tropicana orange juice and a frozen banana a couple times a day. And before I knew it, I started to have this amazing feeling after I would drink it. It was this high, but like a clear high,
Mm.
a level of mental aliveness, I guess I could say, if that's a little bit not exactly a word, but you get where I'm going,
Yeah.
that I had never really felt before. And it was amazing. And it just got me to thinking, if I've been missing out on this for the past couple, like for my whole life, basically, what else have I been missing out on?
Mm-hmm.
And so it got me excited first to learn more about the ingredients that were in there, but then also to learn more about superfoods and nutrition, and then getting into traditional herbal systems of indigenous cultures. And it was this amazing cycle where the more I learned, the more I got excited to try new stuff. The more I tried new stuff, the better I would feel. The
Mm-hmm.
better I would feel, the more excited I would get to go learn more. And then it just kept going, and it has never really stopped. And what came from this is that I started feeling amazing. But of course, when you're benefiting your own health, the natural next step, it's like the natural hero's journey where you go out and slay the dragon and then you come back and share the wisdom and the spoils with your community. You
Right.
want to benefit others. It's a not the natural evolution of things that you just want to keep it for yourself if
Right.
you feel like you found something that can benefit a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in college. My friends were not having any interest in health. They were into athletics. We were all surfers, so feeling good in your body was important. But it was kind of the height of the prescription painkiller epidemic, and nobody was into health but me. And so I was always really careful, not wanting to push it on anybody, and never really said much at all. They knew I was doing some different stuff because I would show up to a party with my cacao elixir with mucuna and ashwagandha and bacopa blended in. And I was on some whole other trip. They didn't even ask.
Yeah.
And but eventually I was on a trip to Costa Rica going surfing with some of my best friends. And we would go out and I would surf for 4, 5, 6 hours, be feeling amazing.
Mm-hmm.
They would come in after 2 hours because they were hungry and tired, wanted to
Right.
rest. And they would see that I had brought with me my little old school magic bullet blender. And I was blending up these little drinks in the corner of the room. I wasn't saying anything about them, but they were realizing I was up to something different. And eventually they said, hey, could you maybe make me one of those before we go back out in the water?
Yeah.
And I had to like contain my excitement. This is like the moment I've been waiting for.
Right.
And I was like, yes, I can. Yeah, I think I can do that. But there was one problem. I didn't realize it so much up to that point, but I had completely thrown any regard for how something tasted out the window. I was feeling so good that I would have something that tasted like absolute dirt
Yeah.
and not care because I knew it was going to make me feel amazing the rest of the day.
Right.
This is not the case for all people.
Yeah.
Not the case for most people.
Yes, this is true.
So the problem was they were struggling to get it down. A couple of them had so much toxicity in their systems from the general college experience that sometimes when you're very toxic and you take things that are powerfully detoxifying, you have what's called the Herxheimer reaction.
Mm-hmm.
The body does everything it can to get those toxins out of your system.
Yep.
And sometimes that's back out through the way they came in. And so two of the guys were vomiting before they even finished the drink.
Oh my God.
And so I had a realization like, oh, this moment I've been building up to did not quite.
It didn't happen as planned.
And I realized if I'm going to have a long-term beneficial effect on anybody more than just myself, really have some beneficial effect in the world, I've got to figure out how to make the things that I'm passionate about, these top of the line health foods and herbs and supplements, etc., taste so good that they come in a delivery system to people, that people eat and drink them simply because they taste amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And they just so happen to be insanely beneficial as an afterthought.
Yep.
And it was shortly thereafter that I started learning more and more about cacao. And this kind of boggled my mind in the beginning because generally with foods, there's a pretty big divide. It's like the Grand Canyon. On one side, you have the things that are traditionally considered to be good for you, but everybody thinks it tastes kind of bad. You're sacrificing the food experience for health.
Right.
On the other side, you have the foods that everybody loves to eat, and everybody pretty much realizes for the most part, at least if they look into it a little bit, that they're not so good for you.
Right.
And there's not much that crosses over here. And the concept of cacao as a superfood really boggled my mind at first because I said, wait, that's something that I only know of as like Hershey's instant chocolate, hot chocolate that I would have, when I was a kid sometimes. Why is this being sold amongst the superfood products? And I started to learn that, this actually has been totally mixed in and destroyed in a way in the modern world that has taken it away from its noble status. And it can be such an incredible superfood, being the highest food source of antioxidants, the highest food source of magnesium, great for chromium, zinc, different neurotransmitters that make you feel amazing, things like phenylethylamine and serotonin and dopamine. And so I thought, wow, this is really crazy. This is like a little bridge growing across that Grand Canyon that could get you from one side to the other side, because you kind of change your taste for food as you get healthier. You stop craving the ultra sweet chocolate. You stop craving the milk chocolate, and you develop more of a palate for the dark chocolate, because it's one, your cravings and addiction to certain flavors, but also the microbes in your gut influence what you crave. So as your gut health changes, your cravings change. So I thought, if I can use this, I can use this as kind of the gateway superfood to start the shift in people. Any of my college friends would have a bar of chocolate. Not any of them would want to have my dirt tasting smoothie. This can really, get me started doing something. And as I was getting more into these traditional herbal systems, a lot of these powerful herbal ingredients have very bitter flavors to them. And those bitter compounds are the medicinal compounds. And in most modern food, they've bred the bitter compounds out of the food. They've taken the medicine out of the food supply
Right.
and
Right.
sold it back to us as pharmaceuticals. That's a whole other conspiracy for other
Yes.
times.
Yes.
But I got to figure out, how am I going to get people in the Western world who are not used to bitter flavors to be okay with taking some of these amazing Ayurvedic and Taoist herbal ingredients that have
Hmm.
strong bitter notes to them. And weirdly, chocolate is one of the rare foods as well that has a bitter flavor to it that somehow people have accepted.
Hmm.
They're
Hmm.
randomly okay with it. And so I realized, if I could get these herbs into chocolate, it serves as the perfect camouflage flavor wise. And it magnifies their effects, because cacao is an MAO inhibitor, meaning it allows the herbs to stay and keep working in your system for longer. And it's a vasodilator, so it improves their absorption and drives them deeper into your
Mm.
system. So this was a huge awakening for me. And I was on my own recovery path from candida, from having way too many antibiotics in my teen years. So I needed it to be sugar free, because when I would try other healthy chocolate products, I could only have so much until it got to a point like, okay, this is too much sugar after two
Right.
bites. I gotta back off.
Right.
And so I wanted to find a way to make it sugar free in an ultra healthy way, where the sugar free sweeteners are actually adding health benefits rather than detracting.
Hmm.
And then you can only do something like this for so long, sharing it with friends and family, before people are saying, hey, can I just order some? Can I buy that from you? And then you start thinking, okay, maybe this is ready to turn into a business, and share my love for chocolate with the wider world, and live the
Yeah.
dream of being Willy Wonka in the chocolate
Yeah.
factory.
You totally are the healthy version of Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
That's so cool. What a cool story. And what, I mean, it was such a, like, the steps just kind of fell into place. So, okay, I want to dive into like what you're putting into this chocolate. But before, so you mentioned the sweetener part, because I think this is what gets people, because you're right. When you start eating healthier food, you start craving healthier food. I have a client of mine, we're just having this conversation. She was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't crave sugar anymore." But I know, like, when we're talking about chocolate, like you're right. A lot of people, the bitter stuff like doesn't always, people don't always love the bitter and like the really dark chocolate, which I love. Like, the darker chocolate, the better for me, but not everybody likes that, the bitter. So you're talking about this sweetener. So you're saying you wanted to make it sugar free, but you wanted to make it where like the sweeteners that you're putting in it also had health benefits. So what are you using, and what are the benefits of the like the sweeteners that you're using in your chocolate?
Yeah, there's a whole realm of sweeteners out there, whether you're looking at the sugar sweeteners, and on there it's a spectrum of
Hmm.
health benefits versus detriments. You can have white sugar and high fructose corn syrup, of course, on the worst end of things. And then as you move kind of towards the healthier direction, maybe you find like date sugar, coconut palm sugar, maple sugar, that have more minerals with them. They're more
Right.
natural. Raw honey could go in this category as well. But before anybody writes to me and tells me I should make chocolate with honey, you actually can't. Honey's so bizarre, because you can't dehydrate it. You can't get the moisture out of it. So
Mm,
it's too high of a moisture content. So
yeah.
any other sugar, you can get the water out. Honey has all these weird magical properties. You can't get the water out of it. It's crazy.
Well, and you want the raw honey to get the most benefits anyway. So you wouldn't want to,
Exactly.
yeah, you
You
wouldn't want
wouldn't
to
want to
mess
mess
that
with
up.
it. No,
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
that separately. If
Hmm.
you love honey, and you want to have honey with our chocolate, just put a little bit of honey on top.
There you go.
Here's,
It's perfect.
make yourself like a little Snickers bar. Do honey, maybe a couple of Brazil nuts, something
Oh,
like
that's
that, and you got
perfect.
yourself
I
your own
love that
homemade.
idea.
And so then you go into the sugar-free sweeteners. And of course, these have been very maligned, because you have things like Ace K and sucralose, and things that are, of course, very harmful, carcinogenic, have very negative effects on how they're working in the body. Then you get into a realm of much healthier ones that have actually real upsides to them. Here you would look at things like xylitol being made from birch trees. But even
Hmm.
with that, there's good and bad, because you can have good forms and bad forms. You can have xylitol made from GMO corn that's going to be laced with
Mm,
Roundup, and of course that's going to be detrimental. You get it made from birch trees, that's looking more positive.
right.
You could also use something like allulose made from an organic source. That's another one that doesn't affect blood sugar, and
Right.
is totally clean in terms of its actual effects on your health. And then there's more concentrated ones where you only have to use a tiny little amount. And this would be stevia. And of course, stevia
Hmm.
has also gotten a bad name for
Yes.
the reason that it can have an aftertaste to it.
Hmm.
Now, there's various different sweet compounds in stevia. They're called rhabdosides. And you call them Reb for short, Reb A, Reb B, Reb C. And they each have different flavor profiles, some sweeter and some with more of a bitter aftertaste. You can have different stevia extracts that are done in a certified organic way, nothing that would, be detrimental. And they can have more or less of these different compounds in them. If you maximize the amount of Reb A, that has the cleanest flavor. So in our experience, lots of people would come up like when we're sampling products in stores and say, no, I get stevia. It's gross.
Yep. Yep.
And I say, please, come on. Just try it. I bet you that you're not going to have any problem with it. And the vast majority, I would say about 98% of people try it and they're like, wow, this actually tastes just fine. It doesn't taste like stevia at all.
Mm-hmm.
There's a very small micro percentage, about 2% of people who I call stevia super tasters, that no matter how clean tasting the stevia is, whatever taste bud picks up that flavor on their tongue is a little overdeveloped and they
Yes.
can't take it. It overwhelms their
Yeah.
taste bud.
That's
So,
crazy.
but it's a much smaller group than people think. A lot of people
Yeah.
who think that they don't like stevia, they just haven't had a clean tasting one.
Right.
And then you have monk fruit, which
Mhm.
is also known as lo hong guo. And this actually has been used as a qi tonic and a lung tonic going back thousands of years in the Chinese and Taoist systems. So you got some great benefits to that as well. It has its own sweet profile, whereas stevia has almost the tendency towards a little bitter aftertaste. Monk fruit gives a little more sour, but again, you can have different extracts of it that are still organic and that can have a cleaner flavor to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so with these kinds of sweeteners, you can actually create things that are amazing for you. And it gives you the ultimate food experience. You don't have to sacrifice that joy in your life. And
Yeah.
when you look at some of these, especially with xylitol and stevia, they're also biofilm dissolvers. So in your
Mm-hmm.
body, when you have bad bacteria, they create what's called the biofilm. And this, you can think of it like an invisibility cloak in Harry Potter. And if you remember the time when Harry first got the invisibility cloak and he's in Hogsmeade and he's throwing snowballs at Draco Malfoy from under the invisibility cloak, and he's like, what the hell's going on? These bacteria under the invisibility cloak are able to keep doing their bad stuff, keep
Right.
secreting their harmful byproducts, but your immune system can't see them to go after them. It's when you take a biofilm dissolver that it pulls off that invisibility cloak and your immune system says, oh, look at that. And you can go get it.
Yeah.
So, and there's many of them. People can look up, lists of all the different foods and
Yeah.
herbs that are biofilm dissolvers.
Black walnut and wormwood, and there's we've talked about biofilms before, so they are familiar
fabulous.
with biofilms.
Oh, you're
yes.
a step ahead. I love it.
We are familiar. That's amazing though, because that's not one that we've talked about before, stevia and xylitol as being part of the group of biofilm disruptors. So that's amazing. So even more benefits. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
so we're talking about xylitol and stevia, because yes, I'm glad that you explained all of that, because I've had the same issue where I'm like recommending plant-based protein powders for people and they're like, oh, there's stevia in it. Like, I'm not going to like it, right? Like you're saying. So when you're looking at ingredients and stuff, are there ways like, are companies distinguishing if it's the A, B, C, or whatever on the stevia? And then for the xylitol, you were saying like, okay, it could be a corn derivative, right? From corn, or it could be from birch. So are you able to distinguish, or is there really no way of knowing what the source of those are?
Sometimes you have to ask the company. I think with the rhabdiosides, for example, and stevia, it's such an unknown and foreign concept to 99.9% of people who aren't in the industry. I think the companies don't bother wasting label space on it most of the time.
Right.
But it's something that they have that information, and I'm sure they don't mind sharing it, as long as it's a nice company. And then with other things, you also have to watch out, because like erythritol is one that has a little bit of controversy around it in the last year.
Yeah.
There's two sides to that argument, but let's put that aside. Let's say you want to find a quality erythritol product because you love that for whatever reason. You'll see products out there that are erythritol from GMO and ones that are organic, and you'll see ones that call themselves monk fruit sweetener. And the crazy thing about some of these, and I've seen actually the test results for it, there'll be companies that call it monk fruit sweetener, and the contents of that product will be 98% non-organic corn-derived erythritol, so high possibility of being GMO, and less than 2% of actual monk fruit, which that's a bizarre thing that you can call it something like a monk fruit sweetener, and that actual monk fruit is less than 2%. It's like, wait a second,
that's crazy.
That feels a little bit crazy.
Yeah. So it's just like a mixture of the two, but it's not really that. That's crazy. Okay, so I think even more of a reason to read labels. Like, this is really good information for people to read the labels. That's crazy.
Absolutely.
How disappointing. That is disappointing. But I'm glad to know that this, and I will tell you all from experience because Sage sent me, I was expecting like a little sample. He sent me like a lot of samples of the chocolate and it's really good. So it's, yes, this, you're not tasting like that weird stevia aftertaste if you're sensitive. So I will say the sweeteners in it, like it is, it's really good. So that being
I'm glad
said,
you enjoyed it.
yes, it was really good, really good. Okay, I want to talk about the adaptogens because there's a lot of these superfoods, these adaptogenic herbs that you're putting into the chocolate. Like there's some for like sleep and energy and immunity and all these things. So can you, oh, actually, first I want to talk about the chocolate before I ask that, because the other thing, and I had this conversation a while back with one of my clients, some people are like hesitant with the chocolate thing because there's a natural stimulant in chocolate, right? And I wanted to address this with you for people who are either like, I don't want to do chocolate because there's a stimulant. Right? Can you talk about like chocolate, like the natural stimulant that's in chocolate and compared to like a like caffeine as a stimulant?
Sure. It's absolutely correct that chocolate and cacao can be stimulating. However, it's nowhere near the level of what you would see with something like coffee. The reason being, of course, in coffee, the primary stimulant there is caffeine. You also have caffeine in cacao, but it's a much smaller amount. Like if you look at a serving of cacao powder, the amount of caffeine that you see in there is within the range of what you would see in a cup of decaf coffee.
Mm,
So caffeine levels are very low, not zero, but very low.
yep.
The real stimulant in cacao is what's called theobromine. It's a cousin of cacao, or excuse me, it's a cousin of caffeine. And this is also a stimulant, but it's slower acting, it's gentler, and it doesn't affect the central nervous system to the same
Mm,
degree as
mm-hmm.
you get with caffeine.
Right.
I can tell you myself, I'm super sensitive to caffeine. I can't
Same.
touch green tea, can't touch matcha, can't touch coffee. Thank God I can still enjoy chocolate.
Yeah,
Thank God
yeah, for sure.
you got to let me have something.
Yes, yes. Yeah, no, that's good. And I'm the same way. I'm super sensitive to caffeine, but I can tell you that I've eaten Sage's chocolate before bed and I slept totally fine. So it wasn't,
Fantastic.
there was no, yes, I'm the same. So no, that's so good to know.
And it's not to say there won't be some small percentage of people out there who are maybe very sensitive to
Sure,
theobromine. That's also
sure.
a possibility,
Hmm.
over a wide population. You're going to get a little bit of everything.
Right.
So it's not going to be perfect for 100% of people before bed, but it's a lot better than a cup of coffee.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Most of though I'd be awake for days if I drank a cup of coffee before going to bed. It just would not be happening. Okay, so going into some of the adaptogens and the superfoods that you're putting in. So I know there's like a million directions we could take this because there's so many of them. And if y'all go give, and of course we'll talk about the links and stuff, but if you go follow his company Adaptive Addictive, not
Addictive
adaptive,
wellness.
addictive. Well, I was saying adaptive wellness, addictive wellness. He teaches so much on all, like there's so much to learn. There's so much education. So I love that on their page. So I guess let's start with immunity. Talk about immunity. I feel like this is a good time of year because there's all kinds of stuff going around when it's winter time. So what are some of the best adaptogens, these superfoods that y'all are using that would benefit immunity?
The first area I love to look to for immune enhancement is mushrooms.
Mm.
And here we look at things like reishi mushroom, chaga mushroom, agaricus mushroom from Brazil. You can also get into things like cordyceps, which technically isn't a mushroom, but it's a fungi. And with these herbs and mushrooms that we're going to mention today, we're probably going to talk about a lot of them. I don't want people to get overwhelmed. You don't have to start on all of these at once. You could literally pick one adaptogenic herb that we're going to talk about today. Just start on one, and it'll have a very cool impact in your
Hmm.
life. So don't get overwhelmed. Just kind of take it all like if you're looking at a menu in a restaurant and you don't go into a restaurant and feel like, oh, I have to order all of these or order nothing. You just say, no, I pick one and then I'll come back another time. I'll try
Right.
something else.
Hmm.
And so the way these mushrooms work is that they have these long chain sugars in them called beta glucan polysaccharides. And these sugars are funny because they don't have a sweet flavor. They actually taste bitter. And they're long chain, meaning they're up to 3 feet long, wrapped up into tiny little balls. And when they come into your body, basically your immune system cuts them up into smaller pieces and they attach to your white blood cells and effectively teach your white blood cells how to do their job better. It's like an operating system upgrade for your immunity. And these are something that don't just stimulate your immune system. It's not like something you take just when you're sick. It's something you take all the time to build up your immune system. They're dual directional. So if your immune system is underactive, it helps to bring it up. But if you
Right.
look at something, especially like reishi mushroom, if somebody has a bit of an overactive immune system, it can help to wind it down and bring it into that balanced state.
Mm.
And so these are building that immune intelligence so that when the time comes, your body has everything ready to go to attack whatever kind of pathogens or foreign invaders might come up.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's yeah, and you hear a lot about mushrooms. That I feel like that's been pretty, I don't want to say trendy. I don't think it's trendy, but I just feel like those have been coming up more. I think
Oh,
people are
hot topic for
realizing, yeah,
sure.
hot
Yeah.
topic. Yeah, that's a better way to say it. Yes, I think people are recognizing the many benefits. And like you said, there's so many. So when you're looking at still staying on the topic of immunity. Well, actually, no, I think this is like generally across the board. So when you're making these products that you're making, because like we were just talking about honey, for example, and saying like you want to eat the raw honey and not mess that up. So when you're putting together these your chocolate bars and you're using the cacao, using all these, so are you like how are you maintaining the integrity of all of these superfoods with the processing process? Is that how you say that? You know what I'm saying? Like when you're
Sure.
putting it together, maintaining the integrity of all these like benefits, these medicinal benefits of all of this stuff.
Of course. So let me walk you through it from start to finish. So it
Okay.
starts with how it's grown. And of course, the optimal growing conditions for each different herb, mushroom, etc., is going to be a little bit different. But one thing with mushrooms, like let's take reishi mushroom just as an example, you can grow it on grain. Many companies do in America. You can grow it on a base of oats or sorghum or brown rice or rye, and it grows fast. And you can grow it certified organic, and it's not really that good for you. The
Mm,
problem is that you are what you eat applies not only to humans but to mushrooms as well,
exactly.
and
Yeah.
any
To
plants.
anything. Yeah.
You're talking about a tomato. If you grow it in soil that doesn't have nutrients in it, there's
Yeah.
going to be no nutrients in the tomato.
Yeah. Yeah, for
So
sure.
when we're looking at mushrooms, they're natural food for these kinds of mushrooms. There's some like portobello, button mushrooms, etc., that grow in the ground. Dirt
Right.
is their food.
Right.
But with these mushrooms, we're talking about often tree mushrooms that grow on fallen trees, sometimes still living trees. So reishi is evolved to eat trees.
Mm.
And so if I took you off of your natural diet and fed you a diet of exclusively grain, you wouldn't be the fullest possible manifestation of yourself.
Right.
It's the same thing with reishi. So the problem is actually two or three fold. So one is that when these are grown, they're not grown properly so that the mushroom is not allowed to fully eat up all of the grain. Because in the ideal world, the reishi fungi consumes the grain and everything left over is now fungal matter. But
Mm-hmm.
when they've done studies and looked at these products, because of improper production methods being used, what's there is pretty much all grain powder. And so you're paying a very high price for brown rice powder or
Right.
oat powder. It's
Right.
crazy.
Yeah.
And the other problem is that when I was saying that you wouldn't be the fullest manifestation of yourself if you're only eating grains, it's the same here because reishi, when grown on wood, produces a whole class of compounds called triterpenes. And these are the main class of adaptogenic compounds. It only makes these if it grows on wood. If it grows on grain, you're not making these in the same way that
That's
you would
crazy.
on
It
the wood.
completely changes the makeup of the mushroom. That's crazy.
Exactly, because they can only work with the ingredients that you give.
Right. Right.
Just like a human, you could take probably identical twins, put one on an ancestral diet and put the other on the mainstream American diet, and look, come back in a few years and you got a very different
Totally.
picture.
Yes. Yeah. That's
And
crazy.
so at that point, we have a mushroom. We have a fruiting body. That's the part that you actually see of the mushroom. Reishi, it's like this beautiful red fruiting body. And that mushroom also has its way of reproducing, which is shooting off spores. And so something we do that's really special with our reishi is we also collect the spores. And
Mm.
these contain similar adaptogenic and immune enhancing compounds to what you find in the mushroom itself, but at much higher levels even. So we take the spores and they undergo a process called double cell wall cracking, because in the spore, there's two cell walls super hard, so your body couldn't break through them. So they get put under high pressure to break through them. And so when they come into your body, you'll actually be able to access what's inside. So we take those, that undergoes double cell wall cracking. Then, with the fruiting body of the mushroom, first, it gets put for an extended period of time. It gets sliced or ground down and put in alcohol. And a lot of the active compounds here are not water soluble, but alcohol soluble. So they
Mm.
extract out over a period of many months into the alcohol. Then that actual mushroom material that you had in there gets removed. And now you have on one table, you have like this kind of a little bit wet mushroom material. And on the other table, you have an alcohol extract of reishi that has the triterpenes in there, which are the alcohol soluble adaptogenic compounds.
Right.
So you put that aside for a little bit. You take this mushroom material and you put it in water. And now you heat up this water and you bring it to basically a simmer for a period of hours. And now we're getting out a different class of compounds. We're getting out the water soluble compounds, the beta glucan polysaccharides, which are the ones that are working on your immune system for the most part. And so you have that going, and then you strain out that mushroom material. And at this point, you've got really everything out of it. So you have a water extract, you have an alcohol extract, and then you combine these together. And then it goes through a spray dryer, and then it becomes a powder. And so you have what was basically a tincture when you had the alcohol extract and the water extract together, spray dry it into a tincture. The advantage here being that you can use it in a lot more applications, and also for the end user, you don't have to pay the high price of shipping liquid in glass bottles around the globe if it's concentrated into a lightweight powder.
Right.
Now we combine that powder back 50-50 with the reishi spores. And so we've got kind of the full whole picture of everything that reishi has to offer here.
Wow.
And then there's the beautiful fine powder. And when our chocolate is going through what's called the tempering process, where everything is being mixed in and it goes through a little bit of a series of temperature fluctuations to give it that perfect texture and creaminess and snap at room temperature. That's when this gets mixed in. And this is all done at temperatures below 108 degrees. So everything is like super gentle.
Right.
And now you have reishi mushroom, everything that it has to offer in a bar of chocolate.
What a process. You're like a scientist. I feel like you should call yourself a scientist. It's like a crazy process. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, that answered every follow-up question I had after that. So, okay.
Oh, lovely.
Well, because I feel like a lot of times, I see like these like superfoods and all these other things, but it's like in my head, I'm like, how do I really know that they're maintaining the integrity of all the benefits of, you know what I mean? So just
Right.
not knowing the process and by you explaining the mushrooms and how they're grown, which makes, I mean, it's like a cow, right? The difference between a grass-fed cow and a
Grain-fed,
grain-fed
grass-fed.
cow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it makes a huge difference. So it makes complete sense. And I don't think we think about that when we're thinking at like these superfoods. You just think a superfood is a superfood, but the environment it's grown in like that, there's a whole process of how it got to be the superfood. And I don't know, I feel like we leave that part out of the process we think when we're thinking about how it gets
Yeah,
to be
with
that
anything you
superfood.
eat, whether it's a cow that's grass-fed, grain-fed, a fish that's wild caught,
Right.
wild caught salmon versus farm-grown
Right.
salmon, they're getting different inputs in terms of the ingredients. Whether food is grown in mineral-rich soil or conventionally grown, like
Right.
monocropped in like a desert kind of
Yeah.
horrible over farmed environment, it's for everything.
Yeah. That makes
And
total
for we could say
sense.
it for humans as well. It's your
Yeah.
inputs determines
Yeah.
your output.
For sure. Yeah. So I mean the fact that y'all are sourcing this from like the best possible place. That's just, I mean, that's huge. Okay, so that was for immunity. So let's talk about let's see, I feel like I want to talk about like anti-aging and stuff. I mean, women are listening to this. This is women. So for
Yeah.
us ladies out there, tell us what we're supposed to be looking at in terms of these superfoods and these adaptogens for like healthy aging and like, cellular health and all of that.
First, minimizing any excessive sugar intake is going to be a big deal, because the more you're running your metabolism based on glucose, you're going to have more of what's called glycation happening in your body. And this is a slightly complex process that goes on, but basically, it's one of the main contributors to aging and wrinkling of the skin, something we're all trying to avoid. And so when you're having less sugar, you're going to age at a slower rate.
Yep.
And then I would say really think about the things that are going to help you sleep. Sleep is your greatest beauty aid. The more well rested you are, it's basically just going to benefit. I should say this: there's really no area of your health that isn't going to benefit from improving your sleep. And so you can look at things like we mentioned, reishi mushroom, great herb for improving overall quantity of sleep that you get during the night and improving your sleep efficiency, which is the percentage of the time that you're in bed that you actually stay asleep. Because you
Right.
could be in bed for 8 hours, but if you spent 2 of those hours kind of rolling around, trying to
Yep.
get comfortable, having, recurring thoughts, all
Right.
this kind of stuff, it's not really helping you.
Right.
Then you could look also at ashwagandha. This is an Ayurvedic herb that is also wonderful for decreasing stress and anxiety, making you feel a bit more peaceful, supporting your endocrine system, because also a lot of beauty comes from your hormone health. If your hormones are totally depleted, your skin's not going to be looking radiant, your hair's not going to be doing well, your nails are going to be brittle.
Right.
Hormones work like such master switches in the body that if you get them working right, fix those kind of upstream, a lot of things downstream, just like, wow, that magically sorted itself out as soon as
Mm.
I helped improve my hormone balance.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I would say reishi and ashwagandha are two amazing tools for sleep. Hoshu wu is another herb that we have in our tranquility chocolate, great for supporting that relaxation and replenishment. And those also looking at it from the sense of manage your stress. And you probably can't cut stress out of your life. We're living in a really crazy modern world that no matter how many new tools we get that are supposed to help us, I don't think anybody feels less stressed than they did 10 years ago. So it's going to have to be about improving your stress resilience. And
Right.
that's really the core of what adaptogenic herbs are about, improving your body's own self-regulation potential so that no matter what's happening on the outside, your body can operate at its best on the inside.
Mhm. Yep, that makes total sense. That makes total sense. So sleep, let's make that note of that, y'all. Pay attention to your sleep. So, okay, what would you say? I know this is probably a loaded question, but if you can narrow it down, what would you say would be like the three most potent adaptogens or superfoods that you're using in your chocolate? Like top three.
If I had the ability to wave a magic wand and get everybody on earth to take 3 herbs,
Mm-hmm.
I would say number one, reishi mushroom. You can probably tell I keep mentioning it a lot because it's my absolute favorite. It's so incredible from the level of immunity to decreasing stress to, I mean, the Taoists would say traditionally that it helps guide you around the obstacles standing in between you and enlightenment.
Oh,
So
I
I think
love
of it
that.
like enlightenment GPS. It kind of takes
Yeah,
you around the obstacles and the traffic jams
I
on your
love
way
that.
and saves you
Yeah.
some time. So reishi mushroom for sure, number one. Another one I would say that we haven't mentioned yet is astragalus. And
Mm.
astragalus is a root and it's a chi tonic, meaning it improves your moment to moment energy, vitality, cognitive function, immune system function. And this one is what I would start everybody on before I try to get them to have reishi, which can be a little bit bitter.
Mhm.
I would start them on astragalus because astragalus has a very mild flavor to it. Massive benefits, mild flavor. It tastes like a light vanilla graham cracker kind of flavor. And it's something that you could even give to somebody with zero interest in health and zero taste for health foods. And they would actually quite enjoy it.
Mm.
Very easy to get somebody started on. So even if maybe you're totally into wild and exotic flavors, but you know your mom or dad or brother or sister, you need something to start them out with, astragalus. And it's
There you
one that
go.
it's great for the beginner and it's great for the advanced student as well because the
Hmm.
benefits just keep on coming.
Yeah.
And then my last choice, number three. Oh, there's so many bouncing around in my head that are like all vying for this spot. But I think I'm going to say cordyceps.
Okay.
And cordyceps is an herb that works on a number of levels, but really helps to replenish your deep core vitality. It's what the Taoists would call a Jing tonic. It's replenishing your deep energy reserves that you burn through when you're burning the candle at both ends too much, just
Hmm.
going too hard, which so many people are these days because they just are trying to keep their head above water.
Yes.
And so that really works on those deep energy levels, but it's also a chi tonic. So it can help get your energy flowing, help your body produce more energy. So here we're not talking about stimulants like caffeine that stimulate to tap into your savings account of energy and your adrenals right now. We're talking about things that actually help your body's own natural energy production methods. So with cordyceps, you're able to produce more ATP, which is your pure cellular energy. And it also improves your oxygen utilization. So from the air that you breathe, more oxygen is actually getting to your blood, to your brain, and to your muscles. So it's improving your ability to go out there and do things because, of course, a key piece to the whole health puzzle is physical activity. And so I love when herbs like astragalus and cordyceps, for example, help drive you into physical activity and make
Yeah.
that physical activity feel better. When you can
Hmm.
perform a bit better, you're going to enjoy it more
For
to get out
sure.
there and get
Yeah.
moving if
Yeah.
you're not quite struggling as much. So I think herbs that support you to do other healthy actions, like the way reishi helps you with sleep as well. That so when these things kind of just start knocking over these dominoes, I think it really helps because it has such a big ripple effect throughout your whole life.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, I love those. Thank you for that list. I know that was a tough part narrowing it down, but I like to give people, and like you said, I mean, there's a lot. And like if y'all go to his Instagram page, you'll see there's a lot, but I feel like this is a good place to get people to start. So those are the three and it's coming from sage. Those are the three best ones. So maybe start with those. So I did want to ask you the one other group before we start to wrap up. I mean, I could sit here and ask you questions all day on this, really. So for because you mentioned it, then talking about stress, and for at least for me, like the women I work with, well, I mean, first of all, of course, stress is at the root cause of every chronic disease. So let's, accept that fact. But I feel like stress and anxiety is so common with the women that I work with. Um, work with a lot of entrepreneurs, high performers, it's just kind of how it's like their drive. So you mentioned those three, and that may be your same answer, but I'm just curious if there's any other ones specifically, like specifically for thinking about like stress and anxiety that you would add to the list for people that are like that's like their main the issue that they're dealing with.
I would say those are the top two herbs, being reishi and ashwagandha, for
Hmm.
stress and anxiety. I would hit it with those first, because
Yeah,
you don't necessarily have to stack five, six, seven different herbs when you've
sure.
got the two best ones. But
Hmm.
there could also be some advantage, I would say, to this is outside, of course, the world of adaptogenic herbs, but looking at supplements, things like magnesium glycinate,
Yes.
which it's a form of magnesium that doesn't bother your digestion and your bowel
Hmm.
movements too much, but it has the glycine in there, which also has calming and sleep supportive effects of its own, or magnesium L-threonate, which is so great for crossing the blood-brain barrier, taking a source of high-quality omega-3 to be supportive of hormone health and sleep. And I just want to circle back to things that are hormone supportive here as well,
Yeah.
because you handle, I don't need to tell this to your audience, they're women, they know it way better than men do. When your hormones are happy and healthy, you handle stress way better.
Hmm.
When your hormones are out of whack, the slightest provocation is the absolute end of the world. And
Hmm.
so healthy hormones are in the running, at least, for the greatest adaptogen in the world themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. No, I totally agree. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And I think that is, I mean, it's all really sound advice. Okay. So as we wrap up this conversation, like I said, I could sit here and ask you questions about these all day, but
I'm the same. I could talk about them all day. We
I
both
know,
enjoyed so
I know.
much.
Well, it's so much to talk about. Okay, so I do have a question I'd like to ask everybody as we wrap up. But can you let everybody know? I mean, I mentioned your Instagram page, but can you let everybody know where they can find out more about your company, you, what y'all are doing, all the things?
Yeah, you can find all of our products, our chocolates and individual extracts of a lot of these adaptogens that we're talking about, and also different elixirs that we make these adaptogens into, on addictivewellness.com. And then, of course, Addictive Wellness on Instagram or on YouTube. We share a ton of educational video content on there. If you want to take a little bit of a deeper dive and explore a little bit more, we would love to have you join the party.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And yeah, like I said, we like to nerd out on the show, but y'all can like really go nerd out on his Instagram, YouTube page and just keep learning. And yeah, so much to learn about. I love it, all of it. Okay. So the last question that I want to ask you that I like to ask everybody, what do you think is the most important thing you can do to live with purpose?
I would say, first, get to a point where you're okay spending time alone, because often, if you're not okay alone and you're constantly surrounding yourself with other people, you can lose sight of your own purpose, and you can get so influenced by those around you if you're never able to take the time to be in silence and introspection. And this could be through meditation, it could be spending time in nature, it could be through whatever, physical activity that you have. A lot of people have their best, most interesting thoughts when they're out there moving their body, because that, gets things moving in the mind and gets the circulation going to your brain. But we can get swept up into just having our thoughts and our desires and feelings go with whatever is happening around us, or get diverted into whatever different things happening around us, and lose that focus. So to learn to be okay with spending some solo time, to have the clarity and the silence in your space, to be able to get in touch with what is your purpose.
Mhm. I love that. That's so good. I completely agree. I think, especially when we're talking about this fast paced world we live in, I think a lot of people are afraid to sit in silence with themselves and see what comes up. So I do think that that is a really good practice. So I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that.
My pleasure.
And
Thank you.
yeah. And thank you for this. This was such a powerful conversation. And I mean, y'all are going to have to, so there's links to everything in the show notes. We'll put a promo code to go shopping on this website and go get some stuff, like take notes, maybe go back and take notes, and then you can decide which one you want to start with. But y'all go check everything out, check out the links and go. I mean, really, what better way to take superfoods than chocolate? I mean, I don't really know any better way. So
I
I feel
tried to
like
make it as absolutely easy as possible.
exactly. I mean, it's no easier. I love it. Thank you so much, Sage. It's so good. Such a fun combo. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me on. It was really a lot of fun.